Okay, this is Algebra 4.3, parallel and perpendicular lines. So in 4.1 and 4.2, you wrote equations of lines, both in slope-intercept form and point-slope form. Keep that in mind when we're talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. First of all, for parallel lines are two lines, or it could be more, but right now we'll just concentrate on two lines that are in the same plane and then they don't intersect. So I can draw two lines. If they're both on my paper, then they'd be in the same plane. Remember that lines go forever in each direction. If they don't intersect, then one way that I could show that on my diagram is just by making little arrows on them. And then I could say that these two lines are parallel. So the two lines, whatever you want to call them, are parallel. Or if they're parallel, the symbol for parallel is just like two vertical bars without anything inside them. If those were graphed in a coordinate plane and I were given the equation of each of those, you should see that parallel lines would have the exact same slope. Okay, so two lines are parallel, then they have the exact same slope. So it appears, the way that I have these drawn, that both of those lines have a positive slope. They're each going up from left to right. Whatever the slope of one of them is the exact same as the other one. Not only would they have the same slope, but they have different y-intercepts. And then different than parallel lines, if two lines intersect, more specifically, if two lines intersect at a right angle or a 90-degree angle, those lines are said to be perpendicular. So perpendicular lines, two lines that intersect at either a 90-degree or a right angle. So I'm actually going to draw two lines in a coordinate plane, so using an x-axis and a y-axis that intersect at a right angle, so we could see a little bit more specifically exactly the relationship between perpendicular lines is. The x-axis and the y-axis are actually perpendicular lines. Okay, but if I have a line, say, going through these points here, and then a line perpendicular to that, so line that's perpendicular to that line could be this line right here. To show that these two lines, I'm just going to call this line 1 and then line 2, intersect at a right angle or are perpendicular to each other. I can make a little square just right in the corner there. So line 1, I could write like this right as well. Line 1, an upside down T is a symbol for perpendicular. So that's perpendicular to line 2. If I actually found the slope of line 1, we could do what we've always done, use rise over run. So if I use these 2 points right here, rise 2, run 1. So the slope of line 1 is 2 or 2 over 1. Okay. The slope of line 2, I'm going to use these 2 points, down 1. So that's -1 for the rise, right 2. There's a relationship between the two slopes. So just like with parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have what are called opposite reciprocal slopes. I'll explain that in a minute. Some people call them negative reciprocal slopes. Some people call them inverse reciprocal slopes. I call them opposite reciprocal slopes. So let's take a look at that phrase, opposite reciprocal. By opposite, if the slope of one line is positive, then the slope of the opposite reciprocal would be negative, and vice versa. If the slope of one line is negative, then the opposite reciprocal would be positive. Okay, here, the slope of one line is 2 or 2 over 1. The opposite of that would be -2. The reciprocal of 2 over 1 is 1/2. So you have to take both the opposite and the reciprocal. The reciprocal is just flipping or changing the fraction's numerator and denominator. So for example, say for negative 3/7, the opposite reciprocal of that would be positive 7/3. One's negative, one's positive. You just change your numerator and denominator. Okay, the opposite reciprocal of 5 would actually be negative 1/5. Because I can make 5 over 1. The opposite reciprocal of that, negative 1/5. So if you know the slope of one line, the slope of a line perpendicular to it would be the opposite reciprocal. Just be aware of that. I also might use a phrase like negative reciprocal, inverse reciprocals as well. So the slope of one line is the opposite reciprocal of the slope of a perpendicular line to it.